I like to actually believe that the backbone of this industry is really built largely by tech and culture. So it's really important for the company to actually have a very reliable technology and service for their users. So that's actually one part. The next part itself is really, identifying candidates who are actually passionate about this industry. How do we actually go about sharing our organizational values and visions? That's really important.
Welcome to the All in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify and stay tuned for our weekly episodes. I'm your host, Lydia, and with us today is Alex Lim of Global Talent Acquisition Operations at OKX. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Lydia.
So tell us a little bit about your journey into talent acquisition, Alex. You've been in the tech and gaming space for some years now, I understand.
I think it's been super exciting in my journey of the career, from games to tech. In the early 2010s itself, when I was in the agency side of recruiting, I had a Japanese client that I was supporting, right? So it was during that time where I was really exposed to the huge potential of that industry where creativity and tech actually combines. There are many reasons I eventually joined the video game industry. We're talking a lot with regards to innovation, a career opportunity that offers a wide range of positions. Like I've said, it actually combines creativity with tech. So there were really a lot of positions that the industry was actually hiring, from games development, programmers, designers, to marketing, management. And when I was actually with Ubisoft itself, the company actually invested a lot in the future of young talent. And many of them that I have actually known and recruited back then are now contributing to the worldwide gaming ecosystem. So it felt really great to see how much they have actually grown in their career. And then going a little bit further, later down the stage itself, was really actually responsible and lead for the leading and mentoring of talent acquisition functions in Asia Pacific. And now today I'm in the fintech Web3 space. That it's really exciting. I think everyone can actually be part of the major revolution once in their career. For some, maybe twice. So I'm really excited to be in this space.
So I understand that your current role at OKX is in talent acquisition operations. So what are some areas that you prioritize since you've taken on the role?
Today, I really have the opportunity to actually support the transformation and improvement of how talent acquisition is defined. We build together strategies, processes, best practices, trainings, tools, automation, and employers' brand to really help our teams around the world to really increase our ability in talent acquisition. And a big part of our work is really going deep to actually understand our wins, our pain points. How do we actually use data to present and better understand in terms of our performance, right? So at the beginning, we put in a lot of effort to actually use data in our organization. Those numbers really help us to tell a lot about the areas that we did well. But I think importantly, we are also looking at the numbers to tell us how we should actually be prioritizing, our projects and programs. So we've done quite a fair bit in the last few quarters, especially. There's a lot more that we're actually focusing on for this year itself. What about in terms of our interviewing techniques and experience? It's both ways. It is not just how do we actually build an employer's brand, but how do we actually get our hiring managers, our interviewers to upgrade in terms of the experience that everybody should actually deserve in this process itself, on the tools that actually help us to improve our productivity, better sourcing ability, a better candidate experience. And of course, we need to actually put in the recognition. So we invested in such amazing effort, but we want to actually be celebrating as well.
So as you innovate your own processes, as you look into different ways of doing things, using data to enrich the way you strategize your talent acquisition plan, what are some challenges around talent acquisition in Web3 space that you have encountered?
It's challenging for several reasons. The demand itself is one, right? The industry is actually growing at rapidly, and there's actually a high demand for skilled professionals who can really navigate the complexity of this industry. the ever-changing landscape of blockchain technology. So this is actually a topic that is actually on top of our head all the time itself. Then the other part itself is really, I mentioned about the technical expertise. It requires a deep understanding of complex technical concepts, right? Such as the global distributed system, where the approach can sometimes be slightly different from a region to another. How about finding candidates with that sort of niche skill set can really be difficult. And this talent pool is extremely limited today. So this space is being relatively new, with the limitation, with the areas that we are focusing on, blockchain or Web3 development. It has actually been one of the key challenges. So we really have to actually take in this time to really take a step back and find a new approach, right, in sourcing for and attracting top talent in this landscape itself.
Now, there's also that element of competing against time, competing against, obviously, your competitors, right? For the talent that you're looking for, especially when they're niche. So what do you do to stay updated around the developments that you mentioned happen so rapidly?
Yeah, I think this is actually not just from the TA space, right? Each company itself do have product team. We do actually have people who looks into market intelligence, right? Insights that's actually available. So two ways we have actually been encouraging our TA teams to actually focus on partner with the business closely to actually understand, like, what's been around in the market. What are some of our competitors? What are they actually doing? Be it whether signing up for newsletter, this could actually help. And then from our product team itself, that sort of partnership, that sort of sharing about the challenges of our product development, stay engaged with the company. And that really can actually give you an edge among some of our recruiting competitors as well.
And this kind of collaboration that happens internally, how often do you do this?
So it's not really like something that has actually been regulated. I think the culture of the company, it's really important that there's always a sharing habit. We do actually have multiple messaging groups within the company itself in different parts of the world. So that sort of news update has actually given us that sort of access that, hey, sometimes you might not necessarily need to actually tap a particular department to be getting some specific information. But the updates that you actually get coming from product team, coming from marketing team, coming from our technology team, those information can really help a lot when we are actually having this communication with candidates. We will get to know what is our advantage comparing to another competitor, right? What sort of USP we have over some other tech companies, for example. So this sharing culture in the company has actually been something that we do a lot. And I think it does help. It's not difficult that, hey, you need to actually apply for a queue to actually get an appointment, to get some product updates. No. So we have actually a very strong sharing culture over here, and that is amazing.
So what are some tips to hire successfully in the Web3 space?
Very good question, Lydia. I like to actually believe that the backbone of this industry is really built largely by tech and culture. So it's really important for the company to actually have a very reliable technology and service for their users. So that's actually one part. The next part itself is really, identifying candidates who are actually passionate about this industry. How do we actually go about sharing our organizational values and visions? That's really important. So it takes two ways, right? From the communication perspective, identifying candidates who are really passionate and be able to actually share, what your company is actually all about. What are your cultures? What are your values? What do you actually focus on? I think that's actually the story that organization needs to actually speak up a lot more. And then last but not least, really is to leverage on online communities. That engagement that you can really build with the communities to form that relationship as potential candidates. Because obviously, you will not be able to actually hire everyone out in the market. We need to actually strategize in terms of okay, there are actually positions that we need to actually hire immediately. but there are also candidates that we should actually be profiling for future needs as the business actually grow. If you have actually focused on senior positions, then, in a couple of years, there are also a lot of young talents who could be building up their career and become, a manager that you love to actually hire in your organizations. So that sort of engagement needs to continue, right? So really it's actually a CRM approach. How do you actually go about profiling, staying up to date on industry trends that I've actually mentioned, from the growth perspective is also a big part of talent acquisition. Really, I think a lot is also about knowing what your competitors are actually doing so that you can actually do a better job.
And in terms of candidate inquiry on the company, we are looking at a talent market that is competitive and people are looking out perhaps for the same kind of niche skills that you mentioned before. So in terms of the candidate, what exactly are they looking for when they inquire about a company? Do they ask specific questions?
First, let's talk about the story, right? What is your company actually building on? If you're actually talking about the tech part, this is actually what we do. You need to actually tell a story. You need to actually be more open about what you're actually building from the tech perspective. Then I think a lot would actually be on the product as well. So product engineering would actually be the true focus, right? So these are actually the most in-demand positions out in the market. You need to actually be able to convey a message and talk really a lot about your product, talk a lot about your technology, and that would actually trigger interest. And that will eventually have candidates or talent to know that, okay, your organization, it's not just looking for another software engineer, but what they're actually building, does it actually relate to what they are interested in? So that part of the process whereby you will have to actually be going through the interviewing process, to align with what the role is actually all about, what the organization is actually looking at from the long-term perspective itself. I think that's actually an art.
Which then contributes to your efforts on retention, right, and growth within the company. So are there specific initiatives that have been implemented, or is there something that goes into the design of that introduction of the company that allows the candidate to see that?
Yeah, we did a major project starting from late last year itself. The entire website was actually revamped and had to actually have a focus for candidates, for talent pool. Yeah, we improve a lot with regards to visual, with regards to the marketing aspects of our brand itself. And, the experience that what we are hoping to actually have for a candidate who could actually be looking around, hey, what is actually OKX actually? The job search, this is actually one major project that we actually did. And then, subsequently after that, we have also put in definition of our interviewing process in each of the different rounds itself. What are the key criteria that we're actually looking for, right? And I think what is also out in the market itself is that, you often could actually be asked repetitively similar questions in each round itself. Just one job application. So we have helped to actually design from a more holistic approach. Okay, these are actually the desired skill set. These are actually the values of talent that we love to work with. So how do we actually, break it down into different rounds of interviewing sessions to be able to actually give a good experience that we are looking at different things throughout. So it becomes a little bit more conversational rather than, what I sometimes say, interrogation. It's two-way, right? You don't want to actually be just understanding what the candidate is capable of doing, but it is also where we have to actually be doing the promotional part. We have to actually be able to sell the job. We'll be able to sell the company. I think that's where we have actually invested quite a fair bit of time. It's still ongoing with a few more initiatives, but it's never going to actually be boxed in a way that these are the only way to do things. These are the only questions. We constantly be looking into a lot about feedback, our success rates, and again going back a lot with data to actually help us understand. Okay, we've done this. how have we actually been successful? What are the areas that we need to actually continue to actually improve, innovate? I think that's really where we don't stay stagnant in our job.
So this competition for the kind of talent that you're looking out there is fierce, as you know, right? And the length of that interview process itself can become, as you said, an area of focus, right? You want to convey some things to the candidate as well as understand what they're capable of. But some candidates, particularly those in demand, they may lose interest if the process takes too long, right? So what are some factors that recruiters or talent acquisition professionals should consider when they design an interview process that is effective?
Yeah, so I mentioned that the experience part is really very important.
Yeah.
You don't want to be interrogated when you actually get into an interview. So we have structured, different rounds assessing for different requirements. But that really also depends on the seniority of each of the roles that a company is actually looking for, right? Are you looking at one or two very senior opening? We're talking about maybe software engineer multiplied by 60 roles, or you actually look for specialization. I think by and large itself, a fundamental approach we as a recruiting team member could actually do is really to actually look into the job requirement. Even going to understand with the hiring managers, what are the key requirements that your hiring manager is actually looking for, and then how they are being evaluated, and then even going to the job description. Do you want to have a long list of requirements? I think that's really something that we should actually learn how to eliminate. Don't think it's actually the best way to actually have a super long job description. That's actually just going to actually narrow down your candidate pool. So the interviewing process should really be tailored to the specific requirements. How do you actually identify the key skill sets, the knowledge and experience that's actually needed? And then you design interviewing questions or as technical assessment, for example, that can effectively evaluate such qualities, right? So we talk about the assessment part. There's actually many different kind of assessment approach, where we use in the process itself. For tech, you can actually be doing whiteboard coding. You could actually be using Codility or also HackerRank, all sorts of coding platform. But what about areas that we need to actually cover for behavioral interview, skill sets, situational judgments tests, right? That helps us to actually take a step forward, a little bit deeper to understand in different situations, how does the candidate actually respond, right? Consider which methods would actually be the most effective in evaluating the candidate for that specific role. And then, of course, we have a lot of companies who are actually hiring maybe 20, 30 positions within 60 days or 90 days. How do you actually speed up process? Because you cannot actually be having a 60 minutes call throughout the interviewing process with the candidate for the next 60 software engineers that you need to actually hire in within the next 60 days. So how do you actually go about taking an approach maybe from a batch interview? How do you actually work with hiring managers? We have actually seen a lot of success is to actually work with the hiring side to dedicate days that is reserved really for interviewing purposes, right? That will really help us organize our productivity quite well. I think at the other part itself is that people conducting the interviewers, they should be carefully selected based on the knowledge of the role. Do they know the role enough to actually access candidates effectively? So that actually comes back as well to another topic, interviewers training workshop, which needs to actually be constantly invested in an organization, right? There are some organizations who actually does that twice a year or once in 2 years, but that really depends on what's actually the growth of the number of interviewers, the hiring needs in the organization. So I think that's really an important, whether this is actually for someone who just newly joined the company, right? You need to actually educate and promote a lot about how do we actually have our USP, how do we actually sell the organization and our mission to the market, to the candidates. How do we actually even bring people to actually webinar or tech conferences even, right? To actually help them to actually be better equipped with the approach that we want to actually be branded, right? And the candidate experience obviously is a reflection of your organization's cultures and value. Again, I stress more than enough, because it really can actually impact the candidate's perception of your organization. So when the interviewing process is actually well organized, it's transparent and respectful. We manage the time by that sort of design. That will actually help us a lot. In terms of how do we actually consider that this workflow being effective or not.
And Alex, how does diversity play into these strategies, particularly in this industry? And what might be some ways to implement these initiatives?
Very interesting question. I think we are humans after all, and humans do actually have our own bias. But what is actually really important is the education and the awareness of why we should actually avoid any sort of bias. And having D&I in place can really help us to actually minimize candidates' elimination from diverse background. It is not just the fintech. We have actually seen, the incremental of female representing a higher population in the organization, right? And how do we actually go about approaching a more diverse background as we move on to various ethnic groups as well? I think that importantly is actually to help build creativity, right? And I have been with organizations, especially in Ubisoft, where the diverse background of colleagues that I have worked with, it really has actually sparked a very interesting approach in terms of how do we actually review our product, the gameplay system mechanics, or even the design, the visual part. And then I think tech industry has been really evolving, right? Traditionally, we know that males are probably dominating a lot from the engineering employment side. But we have also seen that more and more companies are actually, taking into that approach to make sure that we hire more female engineers. So having a diverse employment workforce has proven, myself at least, I've actually seen a lot of creativity. I have actually seen a lot with regards to taking different initiatives and being able to actually really think of the box itself. I think with an objective, we can actually develop a D&I plan. Right? I would recommend very basic stuff to start off with, right? On the job description, avoid using masculine word, and that takes no effort. We have online platform AI awareness to actually help you to redefine how your JD can be constructed, right? In the interviewing process, have a good mix of interviewers, right? Can we actually do panel interview even? To bring in colleagues from other departments to actually come in for panel, right? And although this can sometimes be limited in terms of the options available in the engineering teams, but that is actually something that if you want to actually have a D&I objective in mind, it is something that needs to actually be put in place, right? So can we start to hire more female engineers, right? Putting that as a objective for the teams. And we also have actually quite a number of amazing female engineers. And it's not just us, everywhere else. And that has been able to give a lot of approach to how that can actually be done. There are communities, women in tech, for example, can the teams actually participate in those outreach and network and build more effort and engagement around those communities, right? And then I spoke about the workshop part, the interviewing training techniques. And that workshop should include what is actually unconscious biasness. Why do we want to have a more inclusive hiring practice to ensure that, candidates are actually evaluated fairly? And then let's also not forget that, it is not just the HR or the TA teams who is taking initiative. This should be around the company. It should be even from leadership team to actually share that, hey, we have actually such an approach. It should actually be encouraged and it shouldn't actually be deliberate.
And is there a concerted effort in OKX in terms of operations, policies, and strategies, conversations around DE&I? Do you have a specific type of ratio that you're looking to achieve in a set of time?
We haven't actually have numbers put in place, to be completely honest, because the tech industry has already been first super competitive. And then when it actually gets into the block 3 space itself, we are facing another tier of elimination, right? And that's not going to actually be so easy for us to actually meet like 50-50 D&I numbers, to be honest. But what has actually been put in place a lot is actually our engagement with, like I mentioned, women in tech, going out to schools to actually be having our female engineers to be representing OKX, bring the faces of different diverse groups of people to really come out and let that brand be a lot more diverse. I think that's actually some of the small bites of initiatives that we put on the table today. Can we do more? Obviously, there's so much that we can actually do. But this is actually a very limited talent pool market. We will continue to actually do better, right? And that's actually a commitment that the leaders have actually been very committed to. We're actually putting in a lot more effort than what it was maybe 18 months ago.
It's actually interesting that you spoke about young talent, right? Attracting them into this industry, them having newer perspectives. You've been in the tech and gaming industry for some time, and you've seen the diversity of the talent pool coming up in terms of gender and in terms of cultural diversity. Do you see a bigger variety of people coming from the younger talent pool, those in universities or those who are fresh out of college?
Sure. For sure. I think it's actually a collective effort that is actually not just coming from the school. I think it's the universities have actually been maturing very quickly in the past few years, especially, right? When STEM becomes a more trendy topic, in market itself, then, I think schools are also working very closely with MNCs, with organizations, with the ecosystem, to bring that education. So I think when we talk about D&I in itself, it's not just something that company A put in place, deliver, hoping they actually hit a objective. But the wider coverage itself, the wider context is also collaborative work that is actually done together, whether this is actually by industry, by country, by the government agencies. Everybody needs to actually play a bigger role to actually help get that sort of collective results that we love to see. And yes, I definitely have actually seen a lot more future young talent who are more interested in the tech industry. I think it doesn't require any further introduction, because obviously, big brands like Meta, Google, Amazon, they have always been out in the market hiring young talents aggressively every year. And that's how do we actually come in to actually compete with the big tech companies, right? Because again, this space is actually new. Then how do we actually make our presence? How do we actually talk to people? I think where we have actually done a little bit more, it's actually also down to the up close and personal approach. The students to actually visit our office, going down a lot more often, working with their profs, to be able to actually share more about cultures, life, products in OKX, for example. And that's actually a continuous investment that any company who wants to actually invest in or has a growth plan in place needs to actually be focusing on as well. I think, you just cannot actually be hiring everybody that you like to hire in the organization, no matter how much you pay. That's just not it. There's going to be a lot more consideration for a candidate, a talent to join your company. It needs to also be exciting, right? Some people will want to actually have a work-life balance, or some are actually looking for better benefits. Some are looking for the purpose of their role, in the company that they actually join. So you need to actually be able to customize that menu of yours to suit different talent as an outreach strategy.
So let's move on to the topic of HR technology. There's so many tools out there, plenty of different types of ways of doing things to optimize your processes, keep up with these changes, track, use that data, improvise, do it again, that sort of thing. So what kind of impact in your experience have you seen with HR technology?
First of all, Lydia, I'm a big fan of tech, which is why I'm actually in the tech industry. And it will not make sense if TA or HR are not using tech, right? I'm a strong believer that, if software and tech, that can actually help the team to do a better job, I highly recommend for every organization to actually invest. There are a lot of options, too many that are out in the market.
Everything's serving specific functions, some are integrated.
Then you have to talk about the integration, whether A could actually integrate with B, and then do you have an internal tool, or is this actually going to get a few more stakeholders to actually come in to actually have a buy-in? It's a super complex conversation, right? And now today we have, or at least in the last few years, there's actually bringing like AI chatbot, to serve the employee needs and whatever not. It serves the purpose of something that you have actually been struggling. You need to actually invest in, right? What is actually the pain points that you actually have? It's really something that you need to actually identify. And in your environment, like I said, there's actually integration, there's actually price models, there's customer service, there's account servicing, and how long this company is actually around for. There's just a long list, but you need to actually construct that list. What are some of the must-have as a checklist, right? And also, I think there are also a lot of companies who are actually considering internal development. So that really depends, on the priorities, really. You want to actually have at least the space that I work in, right? You want to have a recruiting function that can really serve you on efficiency. You want to actually have high productivity. So that can actually help the business bring in the numbers, the talent that we're looking for. The HR tech is actually helping us to actually eliminate a big part of administrative tasks. From the start to the end of the interviewing, the candidate journey itself, right? So I don't have the best recommendation of how to actually go about doing that, but I think always actually start off with the checklists. What are your pain points? What are you trying to actually solve? And think about certain constraints and what are the limits that you are trying to push. Who are the stakeholders that you need to actually convince? I think that's actually where that project will actually be a lot more fruitful. So my objective, at least for running a global talent acquisition ops, is to actually make the recruiters' life easier. And, they can actually spend more time hiring another better candidate for that team, for the company.
What about ChatGPT? Have you implemented that?
We use that almost every day.
In what ways? In what ways have you benefited?
I think it's actually one of the best invention, which probably has only spot up, as a very trendy tool that everybody actually uses only not too long ago. I think documentation, for example. Right. I think if you actually have a lot to actually write, whether this is actually for your presentation, this is actually for content building, ChatGPT obviously can actually help you a lot. But be careful. I think it's also, giving you that sort of, I say 60-70% of the content that you need. You still need to actually be looking into refining the suitability. So at least that if that is actually available, use it. At least for myself, it has actually helped me a lot in the context of my work. If you try to actually just search by ChatGPT alone, it's going to actually come with a lot of very interesting results. And, I'm really thankful that there are actually so many users who are putting in the effort to actually edit those videos, showing screenshots of what they have actually done, introducing new products that has actually been focusing a lot on ChatGPT, because I am actually learning a lot on social media platform as well. So social media is something that I really encourage everybody to actually explore more, because it really keeps us up to date. The trends of what's actually out in the market. You don't want to actually be conserved in a space that, you're just dealing with candidates, process every day. You need to actually be out in the market, knowing beyond what you know, right? To actually bring value to your role. And then if that can actually help you improve, your productivity. And I think, as you grow, you need to learn. The learning never stops.
I think you may have covered the next question as well. What advice would you give someone starting out in recruitment today?
What advice would I give? Well, so many, right? I think as we were talking about it,
we covered quite a bit of those.
We covered quite a bit, exactly. First of all, I think, it's really to actually be open-minded, really eager to learn, right? The learning never stops. I stress that every time. What are some of the best practices that's actually out in the market? Yeah. And how does that practice can be appropriate and suitable for your organization? I'm someone who loves to cook. So I like to actually say that, recruiting is like a dish. Bring into every organization, you probably have to actually mix and match a little bit on the spices, on the ingredients that you actually use. Yeah. Find out what is actually more suitable for your organization. That helps a lot. And talk to people. There are too many experienced TA out in the market. Yeah. Don't hesitate to actually reach out for advice. Have a trusted career mentor is really important when you are actually in an organization, and be part of HR or TA communities, because that's when you actually network. That's when you can actually ask for advice, recommendations, whether this is actually strategy, employee EB's approach, or even HR tech that we are looking at, or we spoke about just not too long ago. So really actually be talking and be engaged in that space. Don't stay behind the Zoom or Teams or whatever. Be out in the market, talk to people, be engaging as much as possible, and have an open mind.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your insights with us. So where can our audience look out for you?
Well, easiest way is probably going on to LinkedIn, Alex Lim, OKX. I'm happy to actually connect with you. And, if there's actually anything that I can actually provide from a mentorship perspective or advice, and I'd love to actually learn something from anyone of you who would like to actually get connected as well, please.
Thank you, Alex. We have been in conversation with Alex Lim of OKX in Global Talent Acquisition Operations. Thank you for joining us this week, and remember to subscribe to our channels to stay tuned for more insights from All in Recruitment.